workshop is wood window repair. This is part one of a two-part series. And our instructors, Sam Eubank and PJ Schmiel, are going to be presenting. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization. We are here to empower our neighbors to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We get our fundings from grants, gifts, and donations. So if you feel inclined to donate, please do so on our website at communityhomeworks.org. If you're watching this workshop for the first time, we're really happy that you're here. You are free to put comments in the comment section and we will respond as we see them. If you're watching this after the live broadcast, we'd love to hear from you. It just may take us a little longer to respond. So, with that being said, we're going to get started, and it is now the Sam and PJ show. I don't have any theme music this time, but for part two, we will.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you made it. My name's Sam Eubank. I've been in the construction industry for about 35 years. I always have to remember, or so from when we're here, but I've been doing it for a while now, and hopefully we'll take you through the steps of replacing or repairing your wood windows tonight, so that you feel confident, at least trying to attempt that and be able to learn from the mistakes that we've made or I've made in the past, and make sure that you're lovely. These are a real asset. I am a big proponent of being able to refurbish your windows rather than putting in replacement windows, and we can get into some of that, the details on that later. So, and PJ, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm PJ Schmiel, and I don't have a construction background like Sam does, but I am in the middle of renovating a 110-year-old home that has lots of old wood windows, and I'm trying to save and renovate all the windows I can. We kind of did a compromise, my wife and I. She wanted some new replacement windows, so we got a few of those, but mostly we're keeping the old windows. So I'm just getting into that process, and actually brought one of my smaller window units here today to be using. And yeah, this is a fun process. I've got some of the materials that I've ordered, and so we're going to use some of those. Got some of the high-end glazing putty and other things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this workshop.
All right. So hopefully everybody's got the handouts and that community homework has. And first thing, just because there's a bit of vernacular that's involved with the window, just kind of get familiar with that, so you guys understand the things that we're saying and can refer back to it. This is a standard double hung window that you'll see. It has two operable units. This one's a little double hung, just refers to that both the top and the window and the top and the bottom windows open. Starting here, this is what's called the sill. The pieces that go around the interior, and typically, this would be where the trim or your casing is sitting here. This is called the interior stop. The actual spots where the frames that hold the glass in is called a sash unit. Can everybody see this okay? Do you need glasses, sir? This is my son. Where the upper sash and the lower sash come together is called the meeting rail section. There's a spot here in between the two windows, and this piece of wood is called the parting bead, and then on the outside of the window is called the blind stop, and it's what you don't see. If we were to spin this around here without knocking over PJ's window, it's the stop that this outer unit's on. And then on the outside, you can see where this has been painted. That's where the actual glazing goes. That is a putty that holds the window in place. And then obviously, well, I don't know, obviously, this is the exterior sill, and the side of the window is called the window. This is part of the window frame or jamb. So, and with the double hung window in this older style, it's got what are called weights, and the weights are what balance the window going up and down. We'll talk about why this is wrong over here in a second. But that is the weight that keeps the window in place. It should, if they're properly set, the window will basically stay right where you leave it. So, and then there's a pulley here. You got the weight. This is called the sash cord, and there's a term for this thumb lock, but I can't remember it right now. Maybe somebody else can look that up. But that's the basic parts of the window. And so we're going to close this. We're going to put these weights on this upper window, I think, here as part of what we're doing tonight, so that we can get that to hopefully work a little better. That's okay with the crew here. I
think the technical term for this is lock.
Okay, all right.
This diagram.
And lock and handle. All right. So I'm assuming everybody here has wood windows in their home. Or you're just here for the entertainment value, curious. Right? And so typically, what I've found that most of these windows, a lot of these windows are painted shut. Right? Very hard to like break loose and open. They've not been used or maintained for a while. Some people are very surprised that it's an actual double hung window, that this upper sash actually is supposed to go up and down, that it's been painted closed a number of times. And so we'll talk about how to start. But one thing to be aware of is that if the window is older than 1978, it typically will have, there's a good likelihood that there's lead paint present on the windows, right? We're not going to go into too much lead paint remediation or lead paint. Lead. All right, word. What's that?
Abatement.
Abatement. No, well, abatement would be removal, but some of the proper practices for dealing with lead paint while you're working with it. And so the first thing you would do, if this window was in your home, you'd be putting down a roll of plastic on the floor underneath the window, and in the surrounding area. If you're going to be doing sanding of the window in place, not taking it out, you'd want to create a little like room with paint or plastic hanging down from the walls or the ceiling, creating like a little plastic space so that that area is separated from the rest of the house. So that's really important if you've got small children in the home when you're doing this. So wearing a good N95 mask, safety glasses, that's what I forgot to go get out of the van. Okay, so, and then some people will want to have gloves on their hand, because one thing you want to be careful of is if you're working with this, putting your hand to your mouth or putting it some other place, you could be ingesting the lead paint yourself. So, all right, so the first thing to get to taking your window apart is getting this exterior stop loose. And I'm going to have PJ, if you don't mind.
Now, Sam, if everything has got 12 coats of paint on it, would you have to first maybe score along the edge to get these things to break free? Right.
Sorry, that's what I meant. So, if this has paint here where the stop meets the window or the stop meets the sash, and in between the where the meeting rails are. Taking a knife is the first step that you want to do. So that just a standard razor knife is typically what I'll use. And so I'll come right along this edge where the stop meets the casing and try and score there. And then right inside where the window, the sash and the stop come together, come down here, and then come across the parting beads there. So sometimes the window is painted on the exterior, but getting it loose on the interior is usually your first step. So if this window, I don't know if they installed these before or afterward. This one has screw stops on it. Most windows the stops are going to be nailed in, probably with 5 or 6 nails going from the top to the bottom. So a lot of times after you've scored that, I like to use a 5-way putty knife and get in here and start loosening the stop. So that's sorry, I don't mean to look at you like that. Just working this loose, right? You don't want to pull it all the way out at first. Let's go ahead and pull the screws on that side. But if you once you've got this scored here, you can take the putty knife, either get it in there by your hand, or use a hammer to like pop that in there. So that getting the stop loose is the first step. So.
And are these screws common, or is this sort of a special thing to have these screws for access?
So typically it's just going to be nailed in place, the stops. I don't know if everybody heard PJ's question. He was asking if it's common to have screws in there. You'll run across a few places that have that. We can leave that one off for right now. But typically you won't have screws. These are, I think, an oval head screw or a round screw on top. And then this has this piece has like a washer on it. So it's kind of decorative. So if you want to be able to, and that's a little small for that, but what's nice about this is if you ever need to repair the window in the future, you don't have to like pry it loose again to get it off of there. You can just take the screws out. So,
well, Sam, if you're taking this off and you happen to go too forcefully with the pry bar and you split this all apart, it's probably not super easy to go buy this.
You can buy, well, this is kind of a unique trim, right? But you can buy this stop material. It's usually readily available at most either lumber yards or at box stores. So yeah. I kind of like this one. This is very unique because it's got like an oval opening in it, so you can adjust it tighter and to the window. So once you have one of the stop sides off, then you can actually get the window out and or get the lower sash out and unlock it. You want to open it up so it's up slightly above the interior sill, and you should be able to swing it out like this. Sorry. And usually, so you can either, if your sash cord's still attached, it should just sit in the bottom of the pocket. A lot of times your sash cords are broken, but it should come down and just, as long as there's a knot in here, this will not fall through. So, okay. So that's sashes out, and then you can do whatever repair might need to be able to be done with that, right? We're just going to set that aside. So usually this back window is a little more tricky to get out, and you'll usually need to, you're going to need to remove one of the parting beads, the space in between here to get this loose. And it's probably the worst thing to get out of all the windows. Yeah, so this is a great tool. These are called duckbill pliers. These are available for about $13 at most stores. It's a very handy tool to have. But this is probably the part that will break most often in removal is the parting bead and getting it loose. So
Do you want me to hold the window up?
sure. Usually this will be up loose. Well, sometimes this is nailed, but most often it's just friction fit in there.
No, this one looks like it's painted on. This one over here doesn't so much, but we can try it, or we can maybe score it.
Okay. So, well, one, you can, usually they're just a finish nail, so they don't have a big head on them. And so a lot of times you can just, pull the piece off and the nail will come off with it, because hopefully they haven't used very long nails. Another option is to put a small screw in with have like a bugle head or some sort of head on it. And then don't set the screw in all the way, leave it proud enough so where you could get a hammer on there, and that'll give you a little more leverage to hook on there to pull that off. Let's see if we can get this. This side is definitely already loose. This side I don't think's been removed.
It looks painted.
Yeah. So do you want to score it, Trey? Well, we'll take.
You want to take this side off?
Yeah. You can see on the, well, I'll pull this out in a second, but on this top sash, this has a bevel to it, right? So it sticks out proud of the parting bead here. So let's set this. You got that?
This is like a vice grip that gives you a wide contact area.
Is this right?
So that's recessed deeper than it might look.
Right. So
You want to bring this down?
Yep. Actually, does it go all the way down?
There we go.
So, well, this is the trick. It's been a while since I did this. So, since this edge is beveled and it's capturing the piece in, you want to bring this window down, most of the way down. Get it so it's loose. And then pop it out like that. And so this piece, this parting bead, is also, if you break this, it's usually typically a 1/2 inch by 3/4 of an inch. And again, you can buy this as a replacement at a hardware store. So then once you have the parting bead out, it's again the same kind of process. We've let's see if we can get this one out.
I only scored the bottom part of that.
Okay, go ahead and score
But
the
the top
top.
doesn't look to be painted. There you go.
Broke your tool, Jason.
if you didn't have this tool and you were trying to pry it out with a pry bar, I think it'd be pretty easy to break.
It is, yeah. We're going to go up here, pull a little bit on the bottom just to get it loose or started. And so by like jiggling it back and forth, that's also breaking the bond that the paint had made. And then go ahead and slide it down.
Now, normally, would you need to take both of these?
No, so the only reason I'm taking out both of these on this time is because we took out this side of the stop for the window. So it's going to make it easier to get that out on this way. But
Do you want me to try to get something underneath there and give you a little assistance?
I wonder if there's a nail in there. All right, so this is another good tool to have for these. I don't know. Some people call this like a molding bar. It's also a small cat's paw for pulling nails. Just another pry bar. Okay. So there was a screw in there.
Screw, wow.
Yes. And so
That's probably not typical. Right.
So our next class will be showing you how to repair this. So we'll pull this up the rest of the way. This comes out, slips out like that.
So that one does not have its weights attached.
Right.
If it did have its weights attached, you'd have to be fighting those a little bit and
Right.
unhook
Right.
them.
Let's set this here. All right. So one thing we should do is, so now you've got the window all the way out, right? And where this screw is, okay. I'm not sure. I think this might have been repaired when you guys use it. This is very atypical. There's a screw that goes through, that went through the frame or the jamb and then went into this blind stop here, or the parting bead. So
This side has some nails kind of holding it down, but
so
we got that.
so typically, if you're doing this inside, you're not able to see where your weights are, right? They're hidden in the wall. This window here this is the weight pocket, and so I doubt if everybody can see that from back here, but there's a cut in the jamb here and a cut here, so it's two 45-degree cuts like this, and what's holding this piece in is a couple of nails at the top and then just a screw down here. And let's see if we can get this screw out. Oh, that one. I think that's broken.
I think it might be.
Yeah. Is there any questions so far besides? All right.
I think most people would never know that this little secret pocket thing existed because it's probably been painted over a bunch of times, and most people have probably never thought of repairing their windows, but it's a pretty ingenious little trick to get access.
Screw comes out.
Yeah.
All right. So what this, yeah. So there's just this one little screw holding it in place. And then at the top here, you can see that somebody took and put a couple nails in, and that's where these line up and went up in there. So that's holds that in place, and then the screw holds it in at the bottom. So once you have your pocket off, then you're able to access the weights. If you needed to run the new sash cord down, you'll run it down through here, and it'll come down, and then you can pull it out, tie the weight on, and then pull it back up and tie the knot in it. So
Are all old windows like this going to have that pocket, or do some of them have to dig the actual wall apart or something?
well, so I would say 80% of the windows I've done have a pocket in them, but not all of them do. So somebody at the time didn't want to pay the extra to have a pocket in there. So because it's like
Cents.
things will be fine. I don't need to worry about that. So you, to get to the weight, you can take the trim off, but you can also cut your own weight pocket in there, right? You can also, that's what I brought. I brought in an orbital tool, which is basically something that you would cut the frame out and then reuse the piece and put it back in there.
Now, if you were cutting it, would you try to cut it at that beveled angle like they did, or would you just kind of do a straight cut?
So you would cut it at a bevel. And if I were cutting this, cutting in a pocket myself, it would be similar to this, but I would have cut this one at the opposite way that it's going now. Because this is kind of hard to reassemble unless it already has been built that way. So if we were cutting in a new pocket or a pocket into this, we would cut it more at a trapezoid like that. So, and this is a nice big one. It doesn't have to be this big, but you know, you just need enough to be able to get to the sash cords and also get to the weights that are in there. So. All right, so what we'll do next, I think, is put on, go ahead and run down. We've got the weights for this. We've got new sash cord. We'll show you how to tie the weight and tie it onto the window. So one thing we should talk about, this is the time, you know, a lot of times people, you can still buy the hardware for the pulleys. You know, this would be the time to replace that. One thing about them though is they're kind of force fit in there. Not all the pulleys, some are most likely friction fit in there. So if this is working, I wouldn't mess with it. You could add a little oil right now so it runs a little better. You can clean it up, but taking it out can be kind of a mess. So you can see, well, on this one, there's really no screws or anything that hold the pulley in. It's just the metal here is kind of barbed on the end, and so it gets tapped in place, and it's not going to come out easy. You can get them out, but it doesn't want to come out easy.
Would you pry under it with a little flathead screwdriver or something?
Right. Again, it'd be like cutting the paint line around there if it's got paint around it, and then just working slowly with that like a 5-way knife to start pulling it out, and then maybe once you get an edge, you can use a little bigger pry bar to do that. So,
If you removed it and it was no longer fitting snug,
right.
what would you use to ensure that it was snug? Like glue, nails?
I would probably drill a small hole and then use like a small headed finish nail, you know, like what would be considered a 4D nail or 3D, just to hold it in there. So
Are there some that are
But-
screwed in?
there are some that you can that are screwed in. You could, you know, if you bought a new one that the hole may not fit, so you might have to take a saw or a router to kind of clean it out to make the new one fit. And these, you know, the ones with screws typically have like a recess setting to them, or they're recessed into the wood, so they're a little more tricky to deal with.
And if that's got, you know, a 1/16 of an inch of paint on it because it's been painted a bunch of times,
Right.
that's why your cords didn't work anymore. Is there a way to get the paint off in situ without taking it out of the frame?
Scraping and a little bit of paint remover.
A heat gun or something may help loosen that up too.
Right. Yeah, and now, you know, I thought we would put this other window in, but then we'll get into like stripping the paint on these and that in a second. So is that
Sure.
okay? All right.
Because I've seen some that are so painted that they're not, you know, even if the rope was intact, they'd be inoperable because the pulley was so gunked up with paint.
Right. And so it's like a lot of small scraping that would be involved, screwdriver and whatever small tools. So okay. So one quick thing about sash cords, there's two different varieties out there. One is like nylon and the other is cotton. I recommend the cotton line because it tends to hold up to the sun better. You can, and that may have what happened on, this is cotton, I'm pretty sure, and these are nylon. So you can kind of see the difference. This is almost like a clothesline cord possibly. So this is probably around 3/4 inch or so. This is a little smaller. Was this in here before? Don't know. Okay.
It was in here when I got here.
All right.
Somebody else replaced it.
And how much of a stretch factor do you have to account for? Is this going to stretch very much after you install it?
It will stretch some, but this I probably installed this one. I don't know if you noticed earlier, this side wasn't actually working because, you know, the sash cord was too long. But there should, you know, there'll be enough room in here for that if it does start to stretch out that it's not going to hit the bottom and it'll still work. So, all right.
You're-
Oh, I was just tying it. Sorry.
Are the weights standard size but universal and then the different weights?
So they're typically weighted for the size of the window, right? So the bigger the window, the bigger the weight. There are some websites out there that'll give you the weight size for what you need. So
There are different lengths. I don't know about the diameters being different, but I know that from some smaller windows, like this little window unit, the weights for that, they're around here somewhere, they're quite a bit smaller than some of the ones from larger windows that we had, which were, you know, probably double
right,
the length of this. Diameter looks pretty much the same, pretty close.
right.
These are made of a very cheap kind of pot metal. When I was taking a house apart one time, I threw some down from the second floor to the ground and they like shattered. So, you know, they just used whatever they had around.
they're not, typically they're not seen, so they don't need to be have
Stainless steel.
too high end.
That says 5 on it, so that they must sometimes they must have a weight.
Is that 5 or 10?
Does this? I thought I saw 5. Oh, no.
All right.
This one doesn't have a marking.
Okay. Is this? So typically, you would end up trying to fish this down. And you've got your opening there. Is there a time limit on this class?
For an hour, but if
Okay.
you go longer, that's fine.
All right.
I don't think you're going to be able to figure out a way to be shorter.
Okay. I don't think so either, but all right. So, a lot of times they'll be reaching up here, trying to get your weight sash cord down.
You can just reach through the wall. How do you do that?
Right. And then coming through, I like to tie what's called the bowline, and
Which is spelled like bow line.
bowline, yeah. But there are a couple different knots for this. I just learned this when I was younger, so, and I sometimes forget which way it goes. It goes through here. Yeah. It takes.
Hold the weight.
Okay. You make a loop over the top. You go. This end goes through the weight. That's going to be the where it creates the loop. A little more. The rabbit comes up out of the hole. Oh, I'll let you a little more here. Rabbit comes through, out of the hole, around the tree, and then back into the hole.
Well, this rope is kind of stiff. This is not your typical rope. It's got it's like it's starched or something almost.
Right. And so this is typically used for like tying off a boat line or something, because if you tie it right, you can easily get it undone. So even if it's wet or frozen. So
You have to do anything to make sure that rope doesn't fray at the end.
I don't, because you've got a knot in it here. So, and it's not, hopefully not exposed to too much sunlight inside. So if it was being exposed, and if this is cotton, you can't really burn it like you would for nylon rope. Pull this back in, all right, get it back in the pocket. And then this is going to be the upper sash, right? So this one will be down lower. You want to try and get it past so that it's going to have this amount of the rope length will be the right length for this upper window sash to come all the way down. I'm just going to set it here for right now. I forgot, do we have a tape measure? Okay. The other top right. Okay. So we know that this window here, the top of it, is about 21 inches. So you can pull this up here, holding it tight so it's like hitting the backside of the pulley there. And of course I don't have a marking tool, but it's not, yeah, that's perfect.
Where?
22, mark 22. So I mark it an inch longer is where I'm going to cut it. Kind of make sure that where that line goes up, it's not hitting, bottoming out in the pocket, right? Because you'll be able to feel that. And then this is where you kind of want to be careful. You want to hold the rope. So you don't want to be on this side and cut it this way, because then it'll just fall down in the hole and you'll have to restring it all over again. Hold it this way. And then I typically cut away from myself. Ooh. And not into anybody. And then this is just an overhand knot here. Is there a specialty knot for that? I don't think so. Okay.
And would you double knot it, or is it just a single?
Just a single knot.
I guess you can check it and make sure it doesn't fall down.
Right. And then you want to make sure that kind of hold on to it there and make sure it's not going to go into the hole. All right. So we're going to quickly do this other side. And going to cheat a little bit, reach through the wall, come down. All right. Do you want to try the?
Oh, I didn't
Okay.
pay close enough attention to the bowline and the rabbit.
So you go through. So the one thing to remember with this is that when you make your loop, you're going over the top of itself, if that makes sense. This goes up, the rabbit up through the hole, around the tree, and back in, and then pull it tight on itself. There we go. And it's okay.
Same measurement.
Yep.
Presumably.
Right there.
22.
Yeah. So if you were doing this by yourself, you could take a small nail through the rope. I don't like having to do that because that actually causes a fray point. You could also put some sort of a clip on here that's strong enough to hold the weight in place so that you could get a measurement. If it's a little bit long, it's probably going to be fine for it to work okay. But you don't want to, you're trying to avoid it hitting the bottom of the pocket when you lift the window up. Is this your rope?
Nope.
Okay.
My rope looks similar, though. Mine's got a reddish color. But I think it's the same kind of material.
Okay. All right. And slide her back up. Looking good.
And Sam, this rope, can you buy this at better hardware stores?
I think so. I'm not sure. Did you guys buy that locally?
I think we got that at Yale.
Okay. And we'll see if we screwed this up yet. So getting your sash back in there. So on the side of you can see this has a routed out space. The knot goes down here and then the rope follows up in this groove. Okay. I don't think we cut this long enough. Get one in. All right. So that part works. All right. So hopefully when we get the parting bead back in there, it's not going to go back up like that. So this, you know, the window in theory should stay right where you leave it. It should be fairly well balanced.
It'll have a little more friction with that
Yeah.
bead in there,
Okay.
and also maybe weather stripping or other stuff.
So do we want to talk about finishing the windows or scraping and painting? Is that something everybody's interested in? Okay.
Do you want to ask questions so far, or do you save that for the end?
Well, we can do, I think questions during is great. Is there any? Okay.
Should you lubricate that window at all to make it slide better, like with candle wax or soap or anything on it, or?
So you can. So one thing about these is you don't want to paint, typically, you don't want to paint the sides or the bottom of the bottom sash unit or the top of that, because that allows the windows to dry out or to dry out if they get wet, right? But you can put, I've got a little bit of beeswax and oil, so it's a little softer, but you can put beeswax or candle oil or candle wax on there just to make these go smoother. But you don't want to put anything necessarily on the bottom, right?
Yeah, if you painted those sides with latex paint or something, it would just be a gummy mess that you'd never.
Right, yeah. So if there's paint on the sides, it's also going to make it, they're going to stick as you slide them up and down. So, any online questions? Anybody actually watching?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. Let's. So there's a couple different ways you can go about refinishing and repainting your window. And one thing we didn't bring is a crock pot for the hardware. So if there's multiple coats of paint and you're talking about getting the paint off the rollers and that, you can take these off. You can fill a crock pot. A crock pot that you'll only ever use for something nasty like this, with water and a little bit of dish soap. Drop them in there overnight. Turn it on high. About 8 hours. It'll take almost all the paint right off. The paint will just come right off in your hands. And what's nice about that is you're not scraping. You're not scratching scratching up the material, the hardware. So that's probably the easiest.
Environmentally friendly.
Very environmentally friendly. Yeah, you're not creating a bunch of dust. So, and then with a little bit of, say really like a triple-aught steel wool, you'll bring the shine back, and then you just want to oil it lightly.
Some 3-in-1 oil or something.
3-in-1 oil would work, but I want to say Camilla oil, but that's not available. Just something, a 3-in-1 oil will just like put the coating back on there and kind of protect it, and it'll soak in there. So, and keep it from, well, typically these are brass, so they're not rusting, but so when you've got a whole thing of I'll just leave this up here. There's a few different ways you can strip the paint off of here. Paint strippers is one thing. It's kind of messy to work with. especially if you're doing the frame. It's a little easier to do if you're working on the sashes themselves. The citrus strip there, it's a solvent. It's a little more less toxic than some of the strippers, but it is actually pretty effective. And but you'll probably have to like put it on multiple times to use. This was a pretty expensive.
Yeah, this is about $35 for this gallon. And I thought, well, if I get one of these really harsh caustic things, it's probably going to work pretty well, because I had a natural soy-based stripper. I forgot to bring that. It's different than the citrus one, but similar idea.
Okay.
And that works pretty well. It kind of bubbled the paint up after
Right.
24 hours. If you cover it with like kitchen cling paper,
Plastic
it
wrap,
helps keep it, helps that work. But yeah, this stuff smells really awful. You can just feel your brain cells dying when you open that container, and it didn't work worth a darn. So I don't recommend this product specifically. Yeah, didn't work well at all. I do like, I brought a heat gun and an infrared heat gun, and both of those work pretty well. I don't know if you want to grab those, Sam, and show them off.
So the strippers, they take a lot longer. You got to leave them on there, and you might have to put them on multiple times.
Depending on how many layers of paint you have and what kind of paint, and indoor or outdoor.
Right.
If it's modern paint, like latex paint, it comes off very easily.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times, depending on how the window was painted and the prep work involved, the latex paint that's over the top of the older oil-based paint is basically already going to peel off. You can just, take a scraper to it. So this is what's called an IR, or an infrared gun.
I don't know if the camera can see us, Sam.
Okay.
And this works, maybe this is PJ's. You simply plug it in, turn it on, set it on or hold it right above there.
I usually just hold it about a quarter of an inch above. I think now this does get warm. When I first got this, I thought maybe this was some different technology that didn't create much heat. But if you sit it on there for long enough, it'll start smoking the paint and the wood.
Yep.
It'll char the wood. So you got to be careful with this, just like a heat gun, that you don't overdo it. It'll start smoking, and you'll smell the fumes.
And then a heat gun, which is this is probably a 60,
45, 45 to 50 bucks a few years ago. May have gone up now, but from Menards, this one in particular has, I think, 12 or 14 different heat settings. So you can dial it in, and it comes with a book that tells you what each setting is in Fahrenheit temperature. So, I don't remember offhand the smoking or the point where lead paint vaporizes, but if you know that temperature, you can go a couple notches below that, still get your paint off, but you're not making a really toxic environment.
Right. So that's one thing with the heat guns. You've got to, or any kind of, if you're heating up this paint and you're heating up the lead-based paint, you don't want to get it up past the temperature where it starts to volatilize in the air, because that's going to, get in your lungs that way. So you got to be real careful about it.
You can wear a nice respirator, the canister style respirator, but ideally, you'd not want to get it that hot.
So, but then you're gonna, with this or with the heat gun, this I was using it the other day just to see. It takes about 2 minutes, and then the paint starts to bubble, and then once it starts to bubble, you can set it off to the side and scrape the paint off that area, and then move on. So it takes, there's still a bit of time involved with that.
There's no really fast way unless you send it off to somebody else to do it. Like a steaming table. I've seen setups where it's a table where it captures it and it steams it, and that gets all the paint off somehow. But yeah, if you're using a heat gun or anything, the nice thing about the heat gun, you can kind of use both hands. That's lightweight. You can move it closer or farther. This thing is kind of bigger and heavier. It's got a bigger surface area that it's affecting, but you can't scrape and use this easily at the same time. You got to, I think there are ones that have like little spacers on them for being able to set it on there, and then
you can, once that starts to bubble, you move it down, leave it set, and then scrape the area.
And these things get very hot, so you can't
Yep.
just set it down anywhere.
Right.
You've got to be aware of that you don't set something on fire or burn yourself or set your clothes on fire or whatever, because
Would
they.
a hairdryer do the same thing, or doesn't it get hot?
Doesn't get hot enough. Right.
And I noticed today when I was doing a little bit of this, the heat gun, this thing doesn't make any kind of wind action. That does have a blower type thing on it. So if you're scraping paint and you're creating little dust particles, that will kind of blow that stuff around a little bit, where this one doesn't do that.
Right.
So that could be good or bad, but just something to be aware of.
And so, and the nice thing, as PJ was saying, you can be heating it up and scraping at the same time, and kind of creating it, and then you can get into a kind of a rhythm of like scraping it at the right time as everything bubbles up.
If you get a rhythm in the right paint combination, it's very satisfying you can get nice big strips or chunks of paint
Right.
in one
Yeah.
swoop.
Yeah.
One thing to note though, I learned the hard way, the heat gun will crack your glass. So you have to be careful.
Both of those will crack your glass.
If you have it too close, especially when you're trying to do these little interior strange bevel profiles, you've got to have the heat gun pointed toward the trim, but sort of away from the glass, and you can't overdo it, because I cracked the pane not knowing that early on, that if you get it too close, it will heat that glass up and crack, because the glass is expanding or something. And
Right. The third way to do it is the old-fashioned way, and that's sanding and scraping, the real mechanical way. And why you're taking off all this, the reason to take off all the layers of paint is to get down to where your new paint job is going to bond well, right? So if you're coming across a part that is like infinitely hard to take off, it's probably fine to leave on there, as long as you can paint over the top of it, because it's probably bonded onto the wood well enough to where it's going to be fine to paint over. So if you do decide to sand or scrape, as well as using the heat, the infrared or the heat, you definitely want to have a respirator on, respirators are probably the best way to go. An N95 mask works. It's not as effective as a respirator, but it will do the job. All of that is creating dust or some sort of particulate in the air that you do want to have something on. A lot of people will want to also have gloves on at the same time. So, the one thing is, the flat surfaces are usually pretty easy to get the paint off of in one form or another, whether using the stripper, sanding, or whatever, the heat gun. The difficult part are typically inside here next to the window, right? Where this has like a detail profile where it's a little bit finer. And so
I don't know if I brought all the special blades, but these, there are, curves and concave, convex, different shapes of these things that you can pop on and off of this tool. And this little set was, I don't know, $20 or $30. But if you've got a bunch of windows to do like I do, having this beveled edge will allow me to, come along and get that in a way that I couldn't with just a regular, scraping tool.
Right.
So it makes it a little bit easier. But, you've got to be careful, because it's easy to gouge the wood if you're overzealous. And it just takes a lot of patience and time to get this stuff.
Yeah. Wood windows it's a bit of perseverance, right? Don't let perfect be the enemy here. Get it well enough, and it'll be fine. But it does take time, and your labor is a lot less. If you have the time to do the labor, these windows are going to last you another 100 years. So,
yeah, it's a great investment for your home if you can do it.
All right. Any other questions about the real general stripping? So does anybody want to see how the IR works, or is that?
It takes a couple of minutes for that to heat up. I can plug it in. It's going to create a little bit of a smell probably when we're doing that.
Are people comfortable with that? Okay. Is that okay for the space? Okay.
And the same, the heat gun, likewise, it takes a minute or two.
I think we'll do the IR just because it's not going to blow everything around like the heat gun would.
Yeah, how about we close out the online thing and then we can just do hands-on stuff.
So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of the participants that have tuned in with us. Wanted to invite you all to join us at 812 Bryant Street on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Also wanted to thank Sam and PJ for the information that they provided, and we will see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.